I'd like to welcome you all in العربية session. Thank you all for coming. مشاهدي العربية أهلا بكم في هذه الجلسة. نحن هنا في دافوس في سويسرلاند لتغطية المنتدى الاقتصادي العالمي، ونحن ندير جلسة حوارية حول موازين القوى في العالم العربي. سأتحدث باللغة الإنجليزية لأنها اللغة الرسمية هنا في هذا المنتدى. Dear viewers, today we are here to rethink the balance of power in the Middle East. In the past, the region witnessed two major regional powers, Arabs and Israel. Today, 7 years after the fall of Baghdad, Iran emerged as the third power. Let us have a look at the Middle Eastern map according to the new balance. Iran is going nuclear and already influencing events in Iraq, Lebanon, occupied Palestinian territories, and Yemen. Israel has been nuclear since the 60s and the dominant conventional power, still in a state of war with Arabs and Iran. Arabs are united against Israel, divided in dealing with Iran. Oil Gulf countries fear Iran, while Damascus is ally of Tehran. There are many issues to raise today about this complicated and dangerous triangle, and we will discuss it with our dear guests. Please, let's welcome and start with Mr. Anwar Gargash, Minister of State of Affairs of United Arab Emirates. Mr. Amr Moussa, Secretary General of the Arab League. Mr. Salam Fayyad, Prime Minister of Palestinian National Authority. Mr. Samir Rifai, Prime Minister of Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. William Hague, Shadow Foreign Minister from the Conservative Party from United Kingdom. And Khalid Janahi, Chief Executive of Dar al-Mal al-Islami from Bahrain. Mr. Moussa, I'd like to start with you first. So it was easy in the beginning. It was Arabs against Israel. Now it's complicated. It's Arabs against Israel, Arabs against Iran, and vice versa in both cases. So why not say Iran is good if it becomes nuclear, because it will balance the power of Israel as a nuclear power in the Middle East?
Well, I believe that a part of what you have said is not really accurate. To equate Arab against Israel with Arabs against Iran. There is a difference. There are differences between us and Iran. There are problems, but it could be, those problems could be dealt with through negotiations, through International Court of Justice, through dialogue. And after all, it is part and parcel of the Middle East. As for Israel, this is a totally different story. There is an occupation, continued aggression, and a situation that is untenable, with Palestinians living under occupation for many years. Part of them is under siege. The other part, their territory is being settled, changed. Settled meaning they are changing the demographic composition of the Palestinian territories, changing the geographical characters of the territories. This is a very serious business. In your introduction, you mentioned Iran, you mentioned Israel. I also would mention Turkey. But in all cases, the region is an Arab region. The Arabs are over 300 million individually, with a lot of richness and a lot of human resources. So it is not easy to talk about any balance of power without taking this critical mass of people, of culture, of civilization, of wealth into consideration.
Yes. Mr. Hague, so Arabs seem, as Mr. Moussa said, they're okay with nuclear Iran. Why are you bothered, the West, with nuclear Iran?
Well, I'm not sure that they are all okay with a nuclear Iran. I think many people are very concerned
just Mr. Moussa, huh?
about that. Although I was very pleased he mentioned Turkey, because I think Turkey has a very, very important role to play in the future of Europe's relations with the Middle East. And I think Europe moving away, in some ways, some parts of Europe moving away from supporting Turkish membership of the European Union is a great strategic error, because Turkey is a great channel between the Middle East and Europe. But on your question about Iran, why should we be worried about it? Well, because we should think another step ahead. What happens if Iran develops a nuclear weapons capability? And really then what is one of two things will happen, either that many other nations in the Middle East, several other nations in the Middle East at least, will wish to develop their own nuclear weapons capability. That of course creates a very dangerous dynamic, and it means the non-proliferation treaty, the global non-proliferation treaty against the spread of nuclear weapons would be in ruins. The alternative to that is that some nations in the Middle East will seek new security arrangements and new security guarantees from Western nations, particularly from the United States, bringing an additional security complication into the Middle East, and to some people an unwelcome one. And so if we think ahead of the consequences of Iranian nuclear weapons capability, it really does upset whatever you would describe as the balance of power in the Middle East.
Mr. Janahi, as Mr. Musa said, Arabs are rich. They are really rich, loaded with money from oil. Why the money doesn't go to developing nuclear weapon, nuclear power, or probably invest in military advancements rather than infrastructure, or I don't know where the money goes?
Well, I'm hesitant to agree and disagree with Mr. Musa, and disagree with Mr. Haig too. The Arabs are rich as Arabs, but as people, they're not rich. I mean, especially if we look at the past 10 years, to the contrary, actually, the gap between rich and poor in the Arab world has just gone so big.
That's scary. Where's the money?
The money, you better ask Amr Musa and the the guys with the ties here. And by the way, they are the paid politicians. That's why they have ties. I'm the unpaid one. So.
Well, we need to double check on this.
But I think the point of the wealth, in terms of the wealth going around in the Arab world, that's something we've got to look at. And I hope we're going to discuss it during the discussion time, because that's a very, very important issue to discuss. But I disagree and I agree. Well, I disagree with you and I agree with Amr Musa when it comes to the people issue. We are 300 million people. So-called people are really worried. I would say, well, really putting it as a good accountant I am, being trained in UK as a chartered accountant, I would say around 50 million people to the maximum out of the 300 million would be going along with Mr. Haig. But the 250 million, if you go across the Arab world, they have no problems with Iran being nuclear. They have no issues on that. The issue is how they live their day. The issue is how they're going to make the best for their children coming tomorrow. The issue is how we're going to get work for the people coming in 10 and 15 years.
Yes.
And the issue is how the women will be looked after.
This is debatable, because if we go to Iraq and ask some people in the streets of Iraq, where Iran has a major power, probably they have different viewpoint. Let's ask Mr. Fayyad, do you want Iran as a third regional power in the area? How are you influenced by this, reminding of the good relationship between Hamas and Iran?
I believe what we should all want is a nuclear-free region, in a military sense.
This will not happen, Mr. Fayyad.
And I can tell you, this does not require as an objective that other countries in the region acquire that capability. But this goes to something that really has not changed. You're talking about change in the balance of power in the Middle East, and that is not so unnatural. As a matter of fact, there has been change in balance of power in other regions around the world. What has stayed fixed and constant, actually, is the Arab-Israeli conflict continuing to be unsettled. And that, in my view, has provided an impetus for continued instability. That's the core issue, and that's what we really all should be concerned with. Nuclear-free Middle East in a military sense, I think, is an important objective. And as I said, one need not look for that capability having to be developed elsewhere in the region in order for us to get to that conclusion.
Mr. Gargash, if we look at Iran today and all the media reviews, a lot of people are talking about military strike done by Israel on Iran. Yesterday, Ali Larijani said, I wish Gulf countries don't allow US to use their headquarters in the Gulf to launch attacks towards Iran. Are the Gulf countries the front line for this war? Americans, do they ask you before launching such an attack?
I think first and foremost is that the last thing the Gulf countries want is another confrontation. We've seen too many confrontations, and we think that issues that are important to us, and one of them is the transparency of Iran's nuclear program, should be resolved within a negotiated framework. And we're very hopeful that the current proposals are actually addressed by Iran more positively. Having said that, what is scary about the whole issue is that the issue has an international dimension that goes far beyond the capabilities of Gulf states or, in fact, Arab states to keep it in check and to keep it in control. So while Arab states will work very diligently at trying to foster a stability and a negotiated way out, many of the dimensions of the Iranian nuclear program are international dimensions. They are not really completely within our control.
Okay. Mr. Musa, so let's remember when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and then a few months after that, he threw few missiles on Israel. Arabs back then were just lost. They couldn't stand by Saddam, and they couldn't stand by Israel. So today, if Israel decides to launch a military strike or surgical strike on Iran nuclear facilities, where do Arabs stand?
First, I don't want to remember all those...
It's good to remember, sir.
Not every time and every day, but look, as the minister has said, none of us is ready to support any military strike in the region against Iran.
So how much time do you have?
I'll tell you something. No. Now, we are still in the period of dialogue and negotiations. And a military strike will not solve the problem. There will be an action and there will be a serious reaction. This would put the whole region of the Middle East and the Arab world in a very difficult, insecure, and perhaps destructive situation.
Maybe not.
No, maybe, yes.
Saddam regime fell in 1 week.
Here there is no maybe or maybe not.
Why? How?
We have to be very careful about that. Any military action, especially Israel against Iran, is not approved by all of us or any of us. The minister from Emirates has just expressed the same view. And I believe it is only logical and reasonable to give diplomacy its time. Why giving diplomacy time on Palestine year after year after year after year? And with Iran, there is no time.
Because the clock is ticking and the bomb is...
Sticking on what?
In its way.
On what?
You have time to wait.
About what?
Until they develop a nuclear bomb.
Ticking where?
Maybe they are developing a nuclear bomb now.
And what about Israel?
It's already nuclear.
Look, the Arab League has hired experts to go through all the reports of the IAEA and other international reports to see exactly where does Iran stand now on the question of nuclear development, military or non-military.
Yes.
The result was that the IAEA, which is the agency working in this and responsible for this issue, there is no determination at all that Iran has moved or crossed the threshold towards
but the American intelligence report is different from 2007
so
now,
if this is
and
the
they're
case,
saying
how can you say that the clock is ticking?
Yes. Okay, Mr. Rifai, so the world is rosy, the Arab world is beautiful, Israel is the only problem, no problem with Iran. This is what we understand now.
No, I don't say no problem. There are problems.
Not immediate problems.
No. There are problems. There are differences. We have a case on the islands here. We have other cases of this.
So Lebanon is not a case, Palestine is not a case, Yemen is not a case.
We have problems, but it is not the same problems or the same magnitude of problems with Israel.
Mr. Rifai.
The world is far from rosy. We all know that. However, one of the main issues, if not the main issue in our part of the world, is the Arab-Israeli conflict and the Palestinian issue. Remove that off the table and then we can discuss balance of power. There is no balance of power right now when everybody, regardless if there are excuses or some people use it as an excuse, but the lightning rod of all conflicts are Palestine. So there is no balance right now. It's very difficult to assess whether there is balance or not balance when you've got a major issue that has to be discussed.
Yes.
On the issue of the nuclear program, It is the right of any country to look at energy security for peaceful purposes in a very transparent way, using an international yardstick that it is used across the board. But so we shouldn't mix up the issues in terms of the nuclear file and the Palestinian issue. The core issue is Palestine.
Yes, it's the mother cause, and we'll be discussing Palestine in details by the second half of this session after the break. Mr. Haig, I will come back to you. Then first I'll go to the audience.